Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So here's a brand new deck profile for all of you guys. So we're already nearing Halloween, and as you guys, well, at least some of you know, Halloween is my absolute favorite holiday of all time. Especially because I've always liked, dressing up in costumes and such. And I figured I was like, what could I do this year for my Halloween special? And I figured I was like, you know what, let's do Skull Servants. I've actually had the whole core at its entirety this whole time in my bulk, and never once have I ever considered just, piecing it together. And I figured I was like, you know what? Let's dig out all my Skull Servant stuff, and if whatever else I can get, figured just like let's just build a deck. And honestly, this deck's actually pretty fun. I play Skull Servants a lot on Master Duel. It's probably one of my favorite decks of all time. And yeah, I figured I was like, let's just share with you guys what I came up with for this build, and yeah, let's go and get to it. So, starting off with 3 copies of the big guy himself, King of the Skull Servants. So, the gimmick with the deck in general is that every monster that we play basically becomes Skull Servant while they're in the graveyard only. And this guy's attack points becomes the original attack points for every Skull Servant you have in your graveyard times 1,000. So, like, let's say you have literally 8 Skull Servants in your graveyard. This guy becomes 8,000 attack points, which is pretty insane considering that this effect does not actually activate. It just sort of happens. The only thing that does activate is when he's destroyed in battle. You can banish a Skull Servant from your graveyard and then just special summon him right back. So, yeah, King of the Skull Servants just gets really massive. And the idea of this deck is like you want to try to one-shot kill your opponent, especially when you're going second. Because like I essentially made this a blind second deck, and then from there I basically just kind of work around with whatever I'm dealing with and so forth. Anyway, moving on. 3 copies of White Baking. This card's pretty crazy because like it has 2 different effects. So if a level 3 or lower zombie monster you control would be destroyed by battle or a card effect, you can discard this card instead. So basically it just gives you protection from destruction. And also, if this card is sent to the graveyard, doesn't matter how, it can be from hand or deck, as long as it just hits the graveyard. You can add 2 monsters of different names from your deck to your hand that that are either Skull Servant or specifically list Skull Servant in its text. It just can't add itself, unfortunately, but I mean, that's fine. And then, of course, once you add the 2 cards, you have to discard a card from your hand, which is pretty crazy because, like, let's say you add White Prince. Well, you basically understand where this is going. All right, moving on. 3 copies of White Lord. This is actually the newest card from Legacy of Destruction, which I actually didn't even know existed until I started playing Master Duel. I was like, oh, what does this card do? So this card's actually pretty interesting. He's essentially a Miller and a Monster Reborn all in one card. So once per turn, you can pitch this card from your hand. For every Skull Servant or King of the Skull Servants you have in your graveyard, you can send that many number of cards from your deck, from the top of your deck to the graveyard. And keep in mind, he does include himself because he does count as Skull Servant the second he hits the graveyard. So yeah, it's just like you get 1 additional card to mill. And that's pretty crazy because like the more you fill up your graveyard, the bigger that King of the Skull Servant is going to get. And again, he is a Monster Reborn, so you can just banish him from your graveyard and special summon any Skull Servant monster from your graveyard. So yeah, like White Lord just has so much going for him, and I think he's definitely one of the best support cards we could have had. Moving on, 3 copies of White Prince. So for those who are familiar with the archetype, if this card is just sent to the graveyard, you can send both a OG Skull Servant and a Lady in White. And that's actually pretty relevant because like we do run the original vanilla plus the Lady in White. So, and keep in mind you have to send both of them together. You can't just pick one or the other. And also, he also had an effect where you can special summon King of the Skull Servants from the deck, so long as he banish himself plus 2 other Skull Servants. That part I don't like too much, considering that you're basically minusing 3. But we do have ways to kind of circumvent, getting our resources back, so it's not the worst. Next up, 2 copies of White Princess. I almost said the card wrong. If this card is normal or special summon, you can send a White Prince from your deck to the grave, which then you just basically start filling up your graveyard. But I also like the fact that this is a searchable hand trap. During either player's turn, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard. All monsters currently on the field lose attack points and defense points equal to their own level or rank times 300. So, yeah, let's say like you're up against like a big level monster, like let's say Tenpai Dragons, for example. Like their synchro monsters are pretty high leveled. They're going to lose a lot of attack points, so this could just basically help you from getting OTK'd. So, yeah, White Princess is pretty neat. And as I mentioned before, we are playing 2 copies of the vanilla, just because, like, I don't want to play this at 3. I wanted to at first, but I realized just how bricky it really is. And, yeah, hard opening a Skull Servant just sucks. So you mostly just want to try to keep this in your deck, and that's why I'm only playing 2. Same thing with the Lady in White. She doesn't really do much outside of just giving you your monster's spell and trap protection. And yeah, like that's like, you don't really want to hard open this. You just kind of want to make sure it stays in your deck. Even if you do hard open it, as long as you have the right cards with it, you know, it's not too bad, but still, like, these are the 2 main bricks, so yeah. But anyway, moving on. The last card to add to our Skull Servant lineup is White Mare. I was thinking about playing 2 of this just because I like the fact that he basically recycles your banished monsters back to your graveyard. So like I said, it's debatable, but for now 1 is working just fine. So yeah, White Mare at 1 is usually more than enough, but again, you could run this at 2 if you want. All right, so moving on here. And to celebrate Halloween, I decided to play this card over Unizombie. So playing 3 copies of Jack-o'-Bolon. Unizombie it's just so vulnerable to too many hand traps. Whereas Jack-o'-Bolon, he pitches a zombie monster from your hand as cost to special summon itself, which is actually pretty important because like you can just simply trigger like a White Begging or a White Prince, and yeah, like this card just gets you off to the races. And the fact that it's a Jack-o'-lantern, it's very fitting for Halloween, so I figured I was like, you know what, let's play this, and so far I like it. It's a big body, just to, you know, help you wall up and so forth. All right, now for my hand trap lineup, 3 copies of Ash, which funny enough is a zombie, and it's level 3, so right, that's pretty good. And of course 3 copies of Imperm, and that's about it. You know, I'm not too worried about cards like the Mulch Army, simply because like I'm not summoning a lot from the deck. I mean, yeah, if they play Perulia, they may get like maybe 1 or 2 cards out of me, but I mean that's about it. Because like most of the time I will be able to just one-shot kill my opponent. And for Wallows, like I'm not accessing my extra deck a whole lot, so just to let you guys know that now. But anyway, moving on to the spells now. 3 copies of Lure of Darkness. We do have a lot of darks, but bear in mind, some of our monsters are actually light monsters, like White Lord and White Princess. Those are actually light monsters, apparently. I don't know why, but that's just what it is. 3 Super Poly is just a good board breaker. 3 Forbidden Droplet. Droplet is super crazy because, again, you kind of want to fuel up your graveyard as much as possible, and this card actually kind of helps you with that. 2 copies of Burial from a Different Dimension. So this is one of the things I was talking about, like how you can basically play around like White Prince's weakness, where you had to banish like 3 monsters. Well, this basically just brings them right back. So I figured 2 Burial, it's actually not the worst. And I actually like the fact that, you know, it could be sort of a battle trick, especially if your opponent declares an attack on your king. And yeah, they're going to be in a lot of trouble once he gets that big. 1 for 1, we do run a lot of level 1s. 1 Foolish, and of course the 1 Called by the Grave. Figured why not, right? Alright, now for the extra deck. Playing the 1 Vampire Sucker, you know, classic Vampire Link monster, or Zombie Link monster in general. So, it's pretty good, because especially like if a zombie monster is special summon, you get to draw a card, and that is pretty relevant. 1 Relinquish Enemy, as I mentioned before, we do run a lot of level 1s, and this is just basically spot removal. 1 Almirage. That sucks that we still don't have Link Freebo bag. I mean, to be fair, Snake Eye was kind of abusing that card. 1 Dark, 1 IP, and 1 Nightmare Unicorn for our links. Like I said, I'm not going to go into the extra deck a whole lot unless I really have to, so I feel like this is a pretty solid lineup right now. I might eventually make room for an SP Little Knight, but for right now, I think I like this just fine. For Super Poly targets, I got Garura, 1 Mud Dragon, 1 Starving Venom, 1 Dragus Stapelia, and we actually have 1 additional target, the Dragon Necro, especially because, like, I do have Zombie World on the side deck, so spoilers, and the fact that I can turn everything into zombies, you know, might as well just play this too, right? For my Xyz lineup, I am running a Levier the Sea Dragon. We do have a few level 3s to work with, so that it is possible to make this. It brings us back one of our banished monsters, so that's also pretty nice. 1 Slacker Magician, you know, just because, like, it's just generic level 1 support, and it is a generic rank 1, so that's pretty nice. And if I attack with it, I can just go into Downerd, and then from there, go into Zeus. And you could technically do the same thing with Levier. You can just attack with Levier, go into Downerd, and go into Zeus. So, like, there's a lot of ways you can work around this. Alright, now for the side deck. I'm only on 2 DD Crows, because, again, I had to make room for some other cards. So, we got 2 DD Crows, 1 Necroworld Banshee, 3 Zombie World, which basically is a floodgate in itself because it turns everything to zombies. And that can be pretty detrimental to certain strategies right now, especially because like some decks require like specific types. Like Yubel primarily needs Fiends. Fiendsmiths technically need Fiends to even go into their Link monsters. Tenpai Dragons, they need dragons, so like, yeah, like you can kind of see like why Zombie World is just so annoying. It also plays around the Floowandereeze matchup, because Floowandereeze can't play around this at all. Like, once this drops, they can't play. They're stuck. I'm playing 3 copies of Raigeki just to have extra board breakers. Same thing with 2 Lightning Storm and 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. And if my opponent forces me to go first, because like they know I'm gonna want to go second with this deck, 3 copies of Judgment, you know, just so I can play around like other board breakers myself. And yeah, I don't want my opponent to kind of get the upper hand against me. So Solemn Judgment can come up pretty well and can help me win a game if I'm able to just like keep them from doing much of anything. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you guys have a good Halloween, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.